What if the people you trusted most, your husband, your family, were the ones who made you feel invisible? What if the cruelest words came from the lips you loved? This is the story of how I disappeared from their world, only to find my true self in a city that didn't even know my name. Stay with me, because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about reclaiming power, finding voice, and never letting anyone define your worth. Again, Chapter 1. My husband laughed when his sister said if I disappeared, no one here would notice. I'm Vanessa, 34, and I've been married to Gregory for 7 years. Yet somehow, I've always felt like a guest in his family, never truly welcome, just tolerated. Last summer, during the Caldwell's annual backyard BBQ, I tried again. I brought my grandmother's homemade strawberry shortcake, the only thing they'd ever complimented. I even dressed to match Patricia's idea of casual elegance. As I began sharing a recent design project, I was proud of Gregory's sister Amanda, cut in with a smirk and said, "If you vanished tomorrow, I doubt anyone at this table would even notice." Laughter erupted. Patricia giggled behind her napkin. Gregory chuckled, sipping his beer. I didn't flinch. I lifted my hot dog like a champagne glass, locked eyes with Amanda, and said, "Challenge accepted." That night I left. No tears. No scene. Just quiet resolve. I was done trying to belong where I clearly never would. Chapter 2. My husband belonged to a perfect family. I didn't. Gregory and I met in our final year of college. He was studying business, fully supported by wealthy parents. I was majoring in graphic design, grinding out late-night shifts at a campus coffee shop to cover my tuition. He struck up a conversation over the book I was reading behind the counter, and that was it. Within 3 months, we were inseparable. A year later, he proposed with a ring that could have wiped out my student debt twice over. I thought I'd won the lottery. Smart, generous, charismatic. When we got married, I believed I was joining not just a partner, but a family. But the Caldwells weren't like my family. They were polished, privileged, and profoundly insular. Richard Gregory's father ran a major marketing firm. Patricia, his mother, was the queen of charity galas and country club brunches. Amanda, his older sister, was already a top exec by 30. Even Michael, the rebel younger brother, had a cushy job handed to him by an uncle. I came from a very different world. Raised by a single mom with my sister Olivia, we shared a room until I left for college. Holidays were potlucks, not catered events. The Caldwells' colonial estate felt like a movie set. It wasn't the wealth that made me feel small. It was the way they wielded it. Patricia called my design work cute. Richard explained basic business concepts like I hadn't freelanced for years. Amanda made a sport out of correcting how I pronounced things. Wine, Ames fashion brands, always with a syrupy smile. Whenever I brought it up, Gregory would just say, "They mean well. Amanda's just trying to help you fit in. That's how she shows love." But if that was love, it came in the form of a slow-acting poison. Tasteless, quiet, and lethal. Chapter 3. My husband said his sister just loved differently. That love felt like a bruise. Amanda didn't just test my patience. She tested the very idea of what it meant to be accepted. At our wedding, she gave a speech filled with backhanded stories about Gregory's exes, calling them formative experiences, with a smirk. When we bought our first house, she raised a perfectly plucked eyebrow and said, "Are you sure that neighborhood's right for our last name? When I landed a high-profile client, she asked loudly if maybe they'd only hired me because I was a Caldwell-in-law. Still, I tried. I volunteered at Patricia's charity events, sent referrals to Richard's firm, and picked out birthday gifts with care. I laughed at their jokes even when they left invisible bruises. I studied how they spoke, how they dressed, how they carried themselves, and then mirrored it like a second language. I silenced my instincts just to stay in sync. Meanwhile, I kept my freelance design business running barely. I had a few loyal clients, a modest portfolio, and moments of pride that often dissolved under Gregory's family's polite indifference. Then Gregory got a major opportunity, one that required frequent travel. The assumption wasn't even discussed. I'd slow down my career to keep the household running. No one asked if I was okay with that. They simply presumed I would be. And I did. My client list shrank. My professional identity began to erode. I became Gregory's wife in every introduction, never Vanessa, the designer. Then came the miscarriage. 11 weeks in. Painful, quiet, and dismissed. Gregory was in Chicago. He offered to come home, but sounded almost relieved when I said I'd be fine. Patricia sent flowers with a note that read, "Maybe it's for the best. Things happen when life's not quite settled." Amanda added, "Stress can do that, especially if you're trying to juggle a business that isn't really a business." It was my sister Olivia who showed up. She brought soup, held my hand, and never once told me how to feel. That week split something open in me. The contrast was undeniable real care versus calculated sympathy. My sister saw me. The Caldwells assessed me. But I didn't walk away. Not yet. I convinced myself I could still belong if I just tried harder. So when the annual summer BBQ came around, I put on a bright sundress, baked my grandmother's strawberry shortcake, and pasted on a hopeful smile. I didn't know it then, but that BBQ would become the moment everything cracked, and this time, I wouldn't tape it back together. Chapter 4. I left without crying, without screaming, without regret. That BBQ wasn't just another awkward afternoon. It was the final straw disguised as potato salad and polite conversation. Gregory spent the morning fielding work calls. I spent 3 hours baking a dessert that just once, had earned a genuine compliment from Patricia. As we drove over, he reminded me twice to act impressed about his father's new imported smoker. I clutched the shortcake in my lap, like it was the last piece of me I still believed in. When we arrived, Amanda greeted us like she always did, air kisses for Gregory, a once-over for me. "Your dress is so cheerful," she said, which coming from her was code for a bit much. She whisked Gregory away before I could say a word. In the kitchen, Patricia waved me off with a vague smile. "You didn't have to bring dessert. We had the patisserie handle it." She gestured to the pantry where I was told to leave my cake. Moments later, I overheard her instructing a server to make room for Amanda's tiramisu at the center of the dessert table. The message was clear. Amanda's efforts belonged. Mine were an afterthought. The rest of the afternoon blurred into a parade of conversations I wasn't invited into, and small humiliations disguised as tradition. Even Charlotte, married into the family for barely 2 years, was introduced as our brilliant pediatric surgeon. I was just there. Gregory appeared for lunch, plate full, smile forced. Having fun, he asked, not waiting for my answer. We sat at the main patio table. Amanda eventually joined us, her voice commanding attention, with a story about spotting a minor celebrity at her gym. Then during a lull, I saw a window. I mentioned a branding project I'd just finished. Local bakery grand opening next weekend vintage signage I'd helped design. Amanda tilted her head. Oh, that place with the tacky neon sign? I stayed calm. Actually, it's vintage-inspired. The owners wanted to honor the building's history, and that's when she said it. If you disappeared tomorrow, she sighed loud enough for the whole table to hear no one would even notice. The table roared with laughter. Even Gregory. Even Richard. Patricia smothered a giggle behind her napkin. Gregory reached for his beer, chuckling like it was no big deal. And I didn't cry. I didn't get up. I didn't make a scene that could later be used to paint me as fragile or overreacting. I just raised my hot dog like a glass of champagne, locked eyes with Amanda, and said clearly, "Challenge accepted." Silence. Just for a second. Amanda blinked. Gregory glanced at me confused. Patricia jumped in quickly, announcing it was time for Richard to carve the brisket. And just like that, the moment passed for them, but not for me. I spent the rest of the day observing, not participating, watching how easily they moved through their world of inherited confidence and casual cruelty. Gregory smiled at me occasionally, like I should be grateful just to be at the table. But something inside me had shifted. On the drive home, Gregory scrolled his phone, rattling off Tokyo trip details like nothing had happened. I stared out the window mentally, sorting timelines, resources, logistics. Not emotionally reacting, strategizing. When we got home, he finally noticed. "You've been quiet." I looked at him. Calm, clear. "Did you think Amanda's joke was funny?" He sighed. "Vanessa, don't start this. You know how she is at family events. It was just a joke. You laughed. It was nothing. You analyze everything." And with that, he left the conversation, and me sitting in silence. That night, while he snored beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Not mourning. Planning at 2 a.m., I slipped out of bed and into my office. I opened my laptop. Researched apartments in Seattle where Olivia lived. Checked bank balances. Calculated what I could take, what I'd leave behind. By dawn, I had a plan. And the next morning, as Gregory left for golf with his father, kissing me absently on the cheek, I didn't stop him. Because I wasn't going to be there when he got home. Chapter 5. My husband didn't understand why I left. That alone told me everything. I left quietly. No fights, no final plea. Just a note on the counter, half the savings in my account, and my wedding ring beside a printed quote, "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." I took only what was mine. My design equipment, personal documents, a few mementos, and left behind the rest, including the version of myself I'd tried so hard to shrink into their world. Jessica, my old college roommate, showed up with coffee and moving boxes. Olivia found me a tiny furnished apartment in Seattle, with creaky floors and sunlight that felt like permission to breathe again. The first night alone in a cheap hotel, far from the Caldwell's perfect suburb, I slept deeper than I had in years. When Gregory came home to an empty house, his texts started pouring in. "Where are you? Call me. This is ridiculous." Then, "You're being selfish. I have my Tokyo trip in 3 days." Not once did he mention Amanda. Not once did he ask why. That silence told me everything. Because if you truly don't understand what broke someone, you probably helped break them. So I turned off my phone and started building a life where I didn't have to ask for space. I just had it. Chapter 6. I found my voice in a city where no one knew his name. Seattle didn't greet me with sunshine. It greeted me with rain. And somehow that felt right, like the sky itself was rinsing off the version of me I left behind. My apartment was tiny, secondhand furniture, a flickering hallway light. But it was mine. No one corrected my choices. No one questioned my taste. No one laughed when I spoke. I opened a new bank account, got a phone with a new number, updated my design portfolio, scrubbing away anything tied to the Caldwell name. For the first time in years, my work looked like me again. I started small freelance gigs from local businesses, formatting jobs, social media graphics. Nothing fancy. But every click of the mouse felt like taking myself back 1 pixel at a time. Then one afternoon, I stepped into a coffee shop and complimented the mural on the wall. The barista smiled. "The owner's looking for someone to redo our menu boards. Want me to introduce you?" An hour later, I was sitting across from Eleanor. Gray hair, no patience for pretense. "Show me the stuff you make when no one's watching," she said. So, I did. She studied my forgotten designs. The wild, the messy, the deeply personal ones I hadn't touched in years. "You've been hiding," she said. "Let's fix that." She hired me, then made a deal. 1 personal project every week. No excuses. Not for her, for me. Eleanor wasn't just a client. She became the first person in a long time who didn't just see my skills, she saw my soul. And slowly, 1 sketch, 1 honest design at a time, I began to see it too. Hamir 7. A year later, I faced them all, and I didn't flinch. A year had passed since I left Seattle behind and rebuilt myself from scratch. I never expected the past to catch up with me so quickly. Yet there I was standing in the grand hall of the same country club, where the Caldwell family often gathered their laughter, echoing like a distant storm I used to fear. The event was a charity gala, and by coincidence or fate, it was where I first met Gregory. My heart didn't skip a beat, but my breath caught when I saw them all. His mother's sharp eyes, Amanda's smug smile, Gregory himself watching from across the room. But this time, I wasn't the woman who fled under the weight of their expectations. I was different, stronger, calmer, someone who had found her voice in a city that didn't know her name. Amanda caught my gaze first. Her smile faltered as I approached, poised and steady. "Look who showed up," she said, voice dripping with the same condescension I remembered. I smiled back, soft but confident. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Gregory stepped forward, his usual charm replaced by something uncertain. "It's been a year. We missed you." I missed myself, I replied simply. One by one, I met their eyes unflinching. I wasn't here to beg for acceptance or forgiveness. I was here to reclaim my space, the space I had lost when I was silenced by their expectations and cruelty. The conversations were polite, but distant, like ice slowly thawing. But inside, I felt a fire I hadn't known I had before, a fierce pride in how far I'd come. When the night ended, I walked away without looking back. Not because I feared them anymore, but because I finally belonged to myself. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. Chapter 8. My husband asked if there was still a chance. I just smiled. After the gala, I didn't expect to hear from Gregory again. But life, it seems, loves its surprises. A few days later, his message came through simple, direct, and loaded with everything we never said. Can we talk? I hesitated. A year ago, I would have fallen into his trap. The promises, the apologies, the familiar comfort of pretending everything could go back to how it was. But now, I had grown. I had healed. When we finally met, it was at a quiet cafe. No grand gestures, no tears. Gregory looked at me with eyes full of regret and hope. Is there any chance? Any chance for us? I smiled, a calm, knowing smile. Not bitter, not angry, just clear. No, Gregory. The chapter we had is closed. I've found my story, and it doesn't include us anymore. He nodded, accepting the truth I gave him without resistance. We talked like two adults who once shared a life now ready to part with respect and understanding. It was closure, not just for him, but for me. As I walked away that day, I felt lighter than I had in years. No longer chained to the past, no longer defined by what I lost or what hurt me. I was finally free to write the next chapter on my own terms. Chapter 9. His sister said it was just a joke, but to me, it was the spark. The unexpected happened a few months after my final goodbye with Gregory. I ran into Amanda. It was at a small gallery opening downtown, an event I almost skipped but decided to attend for myself. Amanda was there, of course, looking just as polished and confident as ever. But when she saw me, the usual arrogance in her eyes softened just a little. She approached me hesitantly. Look, I wanted to say about that night, the joke I made. It wasn't meant to hurt you. I studied her carefully. The words were sincere, but the wounds ran deep. Maybe to you it was just a joke, I said quietly. But for me, it was the spark that started everything. The moment I realized, I had to walk away. She nodded, a rare admission that we both knew was long overdue. In that moment, we weren't just two women tangled in the same family drama. We were two people who had grown in very different ways. For the first time, we looked at each other, not as enemies, but as human beings who had suffered, made mistakes, and maybe, just maybe, could understand each other. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was a start. And sometimes, that's all you need. Chapter 10. I had disappeared from their world to become myself in mine. I once vanished from their world, a ghost in the life I thought I was meant to live. But in that disappearance, I found something more valuable than their approval or their acceptance. I found myself. Seattle wasn't just a new city. It was my sanctuary, my blank canvas. Each day I painted my own story one stroke at a time, with courage, passion, and freedom. I built a career that was mine on my terms. I nurtured friendships that lifted me instead of weighed me down. I embraced the messy, imperfect, beautiful person I am. Looking back, the pain, the betrayal, the silence, they were all part of the journey that led me here. Now, when I walk through the city streets, rain or shine, I know who I am. Not as someone's wife or a member of their family, but as me, whole, unshaken, and unapologetically free. I had disappeared from their world to become myself in mine. And that made all the difference. If you've ever felt overlooked or silenced by the people closest to you, you're not alone. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to follow my journey, one chapter at a time of courage, heartbreak, and the strength it takes to stand tall. Join our community, share your story in the comments, and let's rise together. Because here, your voice matters.